So often in video games, we're given several reasons to hate a particular character. The games they feature tend to conclude with a cathartic spot of revenge for the player to indulge in. But what about the deaths we didn't get to revel in? We spent hours upon hours hating these characters just for them to make it out alive. I'm Jess from WhatCulture. Here are 10 video game deaths we all wanted but never got. Number 10. MAVEN BLACK-BRIAR, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Depending on your choices in Skyrim, you can elevate MAVEN to the title of Jarl of the Rift. You'd think that this newfound position of power and wealth might go straight to her head, right? Well, don't worry, because she's always been stuck up and arrogant, so at least she won't change. For many fans of the game, MAVEN represents everything that's wrong with the elite class. She shows zero humility or compassion, operates largely on threats that show how well connected she is in her position, constantly belittles you as if you're not worthy of her time, and she's a total gossip. Even before becoming Jarl, MAVEN is elitist and cutthroat in the way she practically owns Riften. She constantly flaunts her close connections to the Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood, even outright stating that the former owe her their very existence to her coin. A woman with this much influence is certainly a worthwhile ally to have, but at the same time, she is utterly detestable to the point where she may not be worth keeping alive at all. Oh, and did I forget to mention that she also threatened to disown her own favorite child for not being too interested in the family business. Number 9. Mark Jefferson, Life is Strange. It is scary how quickly Mark Jefferson transitioned from dreamy hipster photography teacher to deranged serial killer. Aside from Max's dream soliloquy, Jefferson's is the first voice she hears upon reawakening in class. Throughout the early episodes, it's hard to pin his personality down. While he's supportive of Max in encouraging her to submit a picture to the competition, he also dismisses Kate despite her clearly being distraught by her public humiliation. Although Jefferson wins back some good faith with the players when he bats away Victoria's attempts to flirt with him to gain favor for the contest, this turns out to simply be a red herring. As the story progresses, we discover that Jefferson has been drugging and photographing college girls in the hope of capturing the loss of youth. It can be confirmed that between him and his protege Nathan, and depending on the choices so far, that they are directly responsible for the deaths of as many as 16 young women. In the ending where Max saves Chloe, Jefferson would be dead, but judging by how much more effort Square Enix went into constructing the alternative, it's fair to say Jefferson is still alive in the canonical Life is Strange universe. Number 8. Ada Tucker, Days Gone. This is a bit of a strange one, but let's look at the facts. Days Gone is very efficient in allowing you to slowly kill off all the human antagonists you come up against. Plenty of people we don't like meet their maker as the story unfolds, either by Deacon's hand or Sarah's. One character that flies under the radar is Hot Springs camp leader Ada Tucker. We're tricked into giving this woman a free pass as she has a history with the main protagonist, Deacon St. John, and because he lets many of her more questionable actions slide, we do too, largely because we have no other choice. However, in the few interactions we have with this former penitentiary warden, we find many traits that range from cold and uncaring to dictatorial and ruthless. Although she initially seems warm in her reception of Lisa to the camp, it's not long before that facade crumbles and we see the real Ada. Someone that only cares for her people so far as they can work for 20 hours a day. Many people you encounter throughout the game see the Hot Springs as a prison camp and Tucker as a slave trader. Really, how could you not want to kill her? Number 7. RUVIK, The Evil Within. The Evil Within, released in 2014, is an incredible alternative to the Resident Evil franchise. Where it deviated from Resident Evil, however, was that unlike Ramon Salazar or Nemesis, main antagonist RUVIK makes it out alive at the game's end. Although you find out during the story that he had already been killed and his brain extracted, he isn't technically dead. A nefarious company called Mobius had stolen RUVIK's work on STEM for their own use and required his brain for this alternate reality to work. However, as it was still RUVIK's brain at the core of the machine, he manipulated Mobius and you, Sebastian, into doing his bidding. Unfortunately, by not protecting Leslie, a patient and survivor of the massacre at the hospital, you played straight into RUVIK's hands. You go through most of the game blaming RUVIK for the hell that you as Sebastian are experiencing, and for the most part you'd be right. But in reality, you gave him everything he wanted. In Leslie, he gained a new host body to take control of. In trying to stop RUVIK, you unleashed him upon the world. Wish we could have killed him though. Number 6. Manuel Noriega, Call of Duty Black Ops 2. Slippery, slimy, self-serving. All of these are accurate descriptions of Call of Duty's depiction of former Panamanian president Manuel Noriega. You first encounter him in the assault in Nicaragua, where you're attempting to capture him. Although he initially aids the US in their hunt for Jimenez, Noriega actually allows him to go free, killing his own men in the process. Despite Menendez then nearly beating Noriega to death, he still helps the arms dealers to fake his death and avoid captivity. Several years later, he seems to be working alongside Frank Woods once again. Unknown to the player at the time, Noriega has continued to work with Menendez, and the duo had captured his best friend Alex Mason and Jason Hudson. Using Hudson to trick Woods into believing Noriega was being transported to a prisoner swap, it turns into Woods potentially killing Mason. We probably should have seen this coming, as we did witness him kill yet another of his own men only moments prior. Before Woods can turn the gun on this Panamanian snake, Menendez blows Woods' kneecap out with a shotgun, and Noriega is never seen again. This conniving little so-and-so is one of the few antagonists in the Call of Duty franchise to make it out alive. Number 5. Gavin Reed, Detroit Become Human. Although he's not an outright antagonist in the sense of committing evil deeds, our love for Connor makes him reprehensible in our eyes. Acting as one of the human detectives aiding in Connor and Hank's investigation into the growing concerns surrounding deviant androids, Gavin is nothing but hostile towards Connor. We first meet him when they're attempting to interrogate Carlos Ortiz's android for information. Gavin makes snide remarks about androids not being human and laughs off Connor's suggestion on how to resolve the situation. Depending on how the scenario unfurls, this is a game with a huge number of branching paths. Gavin will even pull his gun on Connor in the interrogation room. Although Gavin's fears seem to stem from the rather more reasonable idea that androids could eventually replace humans, it doesn't stop him from acting like a complete ass in the meantime. His belittling insults, aggressive body language, and even poor crime scene etiquette go a long way to making us hate the Detroit City police officer. This hostility eventually culminates in Gavin outright trying to kill Connor in the police station, and should you lose the fight, he'll get his wish. This confrontation is the last we see of Gavin, who's afforded no redemption whatsoever. Number 4. AMITA/SABAL, Far Cry 4. Whilst we go through a large portion of the game wishing to help this argumentative duo, it is their final scenes that truly make you wish death upon them. In their fight to free KONRAD, AMITA and SABAL seem to be willing to do anything necessary to remove Pagan Min from power, although their end goals and visions of their nation's future differ enormously, to the point that they'll actually ask you to kill the other one. Regardless of your choice, you'll regret letting either of them live at the climax of the game. You'll discover that AMITA wishes to turn KONRAD into a totalitarian drug state, conscripts a child army, and has potentially killed Badra, while SABAL has anyone allied with AMITA executed and begins a holy cleansing of the land. Although technically, yes, you can elect to shoot whoever survives at the end of the campaign, this is following the final cutscene of the game, and should the story be continued in any future medium, would likely not be considered a canonical death. Whilst the game had largely painted both AMITA and SABAL as allies of the protagonist, their individual final scenes show you that they may be no better than Pagan Min, and thus your urge to kill another tyrant is renewed. Number 3. Bonnie, TELLTALE'S The Walking Dead, Season 2. Arvo could just as easily have taken this spot instead, as he's the one that shot Clementine, but Bonnie beats him to the punch just through the sheer number of awful things she's done. We first meet Bonnie sneaking around the ski lodge, peering through the windows. Although Kenny and Clementine are initially skeptical of her story about having a family to feed, Walter gives her a fairly large box of food and supplies to take back with her. It turns out that she was merely sent forward as a spy for Carver to locate Rebecca. She leads Carver and the others to the ski lodge, where Walter and potentially Alvin are killed. Nice one, Bonnie! Although she seems to be on the redemptive path when she helps Clementine and co escape from Carver's camp, it doesn't last that long. She constantly puts Clementine's life at risk, though it's when she asks Clem to cross the cracking ice to save Luke that's the last straw. There are several outcomes here, but should you elect to not help Luke and cover him instead, like he asked you to, then Bonnie will blame you for his death. No matter what happens though, she will side with Arvo, steal the group's supplies, and leave Clementine to die. Number 2. John KONRAD, Spec Ops: The Line. We spent the entirety of the terrifyingly vivid and traumatic campaign of Spec Ops: The Line believing that we were en route to stopping Colonel John KONRAD, a war criminal and deserter who'd established a tyrannical rule over the people of the ruins of Dubai. But alas, no. Set in a reality where the capital of the United Arab Emirates has been destroyed by sandstorms and the American military unit that had initially been sent in to keep the peace had gone rogue, you could easily be tricked into believing that the identities of the good guys and bad guys was obvious. The climactic twist proves otherwise. It turns out that KONRAD had been dead the whole time, and the supposed main protagonist, Martin Walker, had been the real villain all along. Whilst we're still given the option of killing the real villain via suicide, the truth is that we were unable to kill the antagonist the story had thus far built up. We wanted to kill the man who we believed had committed so many atrocities, and instead all we found was the body of a soldier who'd attempted to go above and beyond his duty but ultimately failed. A tragic story with no happy ending. Number 1. Abby Anderson, The Last of Us Part 2. Abby is truly one of the most controversial characters that video games have ever seen. Some understand her, some are so torn about her, many outright hate her. All are fair responses when considering the events of both installments. After spending many hours getting to know and love Joel and Ellie in the first game, we were consumed by grief upon witnessing Abby's ruthless execution of the former so early in the game's story. Thus, the revenge story would begin, and surely we were entitled to a satisfying ending where we could cave in Abby's skull in return, right? Oh, how very wrong we were. Partway through the story, we shift perspectives from Ellie to Abby. It transpires that the surgeon that Joel killed at the end of the first game to save Ellie was Abby's father. Naughty Dog wanted to make people realize that, simply put, Joel was a shitty person, and that Abby was equally entitled to her own revenge story. After weeks of injury, struggle, and hardship, Ellie finally got the chance to end Abby once and for all, but at the last second, she lets her go. It's understandable why some felt let down by this ending, but it was always the story the writers were intending to tell. Revenge will not bring you peace. Let me know down in that comment section if you can think of any other video game deaths you desperately wanted but did not receive. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. You can come say hi to me on my Twitter where I'm @JessMcDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more content goodness.